white as milk, the cape is red as blood, the hair is yellow as corn, the slipper is pure as gold.
The cow is white as milk, the cape is red as blood, the hair is yellow as corn, the slipper is pure as gold.
So, say that again.
On your way to market? Mark had been there a long time ago, taking your time.
No, he was robbing me, raping me, rooting through my rutabaga, raiding my arugula, and ripping up the rampion, my champion, my favorite. I should have laid a spell on him right there. I could have turned him into a stone or a dog or a chair or... But I let him have a rampion.
Working on this show in particular, working on Into the Woods, that started as a collaboration of the mind between Joe Calarco, the director, and I, where we started talking about what we thought this character was in the show and how it might be represented on stage with the physical puppet. And then from there, we start to make that object and we bring it into the rehearsal room, and we had a collaborative moment with all the performers where everybody who was going to interact with Milky White came in and started playing with a version of the puppet, and we started to see what made sense in all of their bodies and what made sense with the skills that they were bringing to its movement and what made sense for the story in terms of how they interact with it. And then from there, we sort of calcified that and built a puppet that retained all those elements, both from the early discussions and from performing in the room, and then brought that into rehearsal. And you can see the way that it starts to change the temperature of the room, and they were able to connect with that, which I take no credit for. I mean, really, that was just, they were looking at almost a blank slate, but they were the ones giving it the attention and the focus that makes you start to believe, that between it moving on its own or appearing to move on its own and the sort of contact that they would make with it, it really started to come to life and breathe on its own, and makes you feel it in those moments where all of a sudden, you're starting to feel for this cow.
I guess this is goodbye, old pal. You've been a perfect friend. I hate to see us part, old pal. Someday I'll buy you back. I'll see you soon again. I hope that when I do,
isn't a cow, it's not a real cow, and this boy, everybody's playing something. But suddenly you look and you're like, I'm feeling for it anyway. Why do I believe this? Nothing in your sight tells you to believe that. Nothing there makes sense visually. It's all sort of a suggestion of something else, but when you get the truth coming from the actor and the breath coming through their performance of the puppet, you start to see a reality in there.
My job is a lot more fun than I think people think, which is just to bang out notes and say I'm done.
High in the tower, yours was but higher, a beauty asleep.
Primarily my job is to, most obviously, to teach the notes and the rhythms and the words, and then to interpret them and to find a way into the writer's mind on how to approach phrasings and interpretation, and how do the lyrics and the music purposely fight each other, and when do they complement each other, and which one is the way you want to play it.
Fly birds, back to the sky, back to the even.
A lot of actors are lazy, and I don't say that in an insulting way. I just say that the way we speak now is very different than a very disciplined, organized set of music, specifically in the style of Stephen Sondheim. And to get words in front and to get people to think of what the end of a whole thought means. When he writes sentences that have commas that go for 2 pages, you can the listener can get lost as to what the thought was, where it was even going. And my job is to be the audience in rehearsals and to say, you know what, I'm not getting that. And maybe you should breathe here and re-accent the beginning of that phrase. Or even though there's a rest, please let your intention keep going that you didn't make your point yet. Artistically, my contribution has to really just to honor the material.
To be continued. And happy ever after.
So basically, an understudy is like the first line of defense if something goes wrong with like the actor that's currently playing the part. We basically sit in rehearsals the same time that those actors are called, and we basically learn all the blocking, the notes, every piece of direction. We are prepared to go on in case that actor is like sick or can't make the performance, and you really are like the first line of defense.
So my process for finding a character is going first through the script and breaking everything down, figuring out how do I relate to other people, how do I relate to the world that I'm living in, and then just finding my own way in. So saying, how is this character similar to me and how is it different?
The actors themselves are bringing all these fresh takes to each of the roles, and the director Joe has this great vision for all the different characters and how they move through the show and how it relates to the current world that we live in.
I feel like it's easy to get sort of stuck in this idea of a fairy tale and everything is too big to be true and nothing is really real. And what I love so much about this production is that you look at the people on stage and you're like, okay, this is a woman who wants to have a baby and the only way she can do it is by breaking this crazy spell. Joe, the director, just brought such a realistic take to such a crazy sort of silly story that watching it, you see yourself on the stage in characters, and that's what I think the most beautiful part about this specific production is.
Once upon a time.
I was watching him crawl back over the wall. It banged a crash! The lightning flash! Well, that's another story. Never mind. Anyway, the next week they came. I think they came. Don't take it! When I did it, I hit up my shoulder. Your father cried. Your mother died. And for extra measure, I admitted was a pressure to say sorry. I'm still not qualified. So I laid a little spell on them.
There's no possible way to describe what lights in the sky. There are big